The Baltimore Ravens added to their wide receiver core, signing veteran Russell Gage. We talk about what it means for the team, what it means for the wide receiver group, what Gage brings to the table, and so much more coming up next here on this instant reaction edition of Locked On Ravens.
You are Locked On Ravens, your daily Baltimore Ravens podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into a bonus edition, instant reaction edition of Locked On Ravens. We are your daily Baltimore Ravens podcast. And as always, I am your host, Kevin Oestreicher of Ravens Wire. We are here for you this afternoon on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thank you so much, as always, for being here this afternoon, making Locked On Ravens your first listen each and every day, and just a part of your day in general. We're free and available for you on all podcasting platforms. That includes in video form on YouTube, where you can like, subscribe, and catch these bonus instant reaction episodes, or in audio form. You can catch them over there as well. We do put them out in audio form after the fact. So whether you're Apple Podcast, Spotify, we have you covered there as well. This afternoon's episode of Locked On Ravens is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more as the playoffs wind down. The sports stop sportsing like we want them to, but this summer FanDuel's hooking up all customers with a booster bonus daily. That's right, there's something for everyone every day all summer long. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. Well, I'll tell you, I was not expecting to do a bonus episode of the show today, but you know what? Hey, the Ravens signed a veteran wide receiver. I think that is a cause for a instant reaction episode. Russell Gage is the name, a actually pretty seasoned vet, all things considered. We're going to talk about him, just what he brings to the table in general. Is he a guy that's going to compete for playing time? Is he even going to make the roster? So there are a lot of other conversations to be had, and also what it means for the Ravens and these other wide receivers who are vying for roster spots. So Tylan Wallace, does this have something to do with Rashad Bateman, Deontay Hardy? I mean, there are so many different storylines that we're going to get into. So really appreciate everybody. For those who are new to the channel, we're 5 days a week here of Ravens content, plus these bonus episodes. So Monday through Friday, we do this, and really exciting. If you're here, if you're an everydayer, really appreciate you. And if you're somewhere in the middle, really appreciate you tuning in as well. We already have people in the chat. Don C here. I appreciate this, Don. YouTube content monster, man. It means the world to me. Lamont, what's good, Lamont? I appreciate you. Flock Nation, he says, Ravens 76 be more in the chat. Oreo Cookie is here. We got Tim. We got the chef. We got everybody in the chat. So if you want to catch these live on YouTube, you should have turned notifications on. But let's get into the man of the hour. Russell Gage comes over from the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, was drafted by the Atlanta Falcons, played decently well over there in Atlanta, if we're being honest. I mean, he was someone who was like a number 3 wide receiver for them. He spent his first 4 years of his career in Atlanta, then moved on to Tampa Bay, played with Tom Brady. Now, he signed with Tampa Bay in 2022. He signed a 3-year deal there, and he only played 2 seasons, but he technically only really played in 1. But he only played 4 total games, or excuse me, 13. He started 4 games, but missed all of the 2023 season with a torn patella tendon. Russell Gage is someone who can provide value, I would probably say, as a receiver 4, receiver 5 in this offense. So look, this is not a signing that moves the needle for me. And we can honestly, let me look up quickly, because look, we can talk about guys like Michael Thomas. We can talk about guys like Hunter Renfrow. Russell Gage was not the best wide receiver on the market still, but I think Russell Gage, and John Harbaugh has said this, it takes a specific type of wide receiver to want to play in this Baltimore offense. Even though we are out of the Greg Roman era and into the Todd Monken era, you can't be worried about targets and share and things like that, because while I expect the Ravens to become more of a balanced team this year in terms of run versus pass and everything, they're not going to change up their identity and all of a sudden become this air raid offense and throw the ball 50 times a game. That's not who they are. That's not who they should be, because Baltimore is such a dominant running team. So in terms of the other free agent wide receivers on the market, Michael Thomas and Hunter Renfrow, those are the 2 guys that they headline it. There weren't really a ton of needle movers anyway, but to me, again, and we talked about this when they had Josh Reynolds in for a visit, when they had Michael Gallup in for a visit before he retired. The Ravens, I don't think, were ever in the market to bring in somebody to compete with Rashad Bateman for that number 2 spot. I feel like they really wanted to hand over the reins to him as the number 2 guy and then bring in other players to complement him this season. Now, will that work? Will it not? We are still in the to be determined mode. Bateman, just for an update here, as we are recording this during Ravens practice on Tuesday, he is not at practice. So we don't know what his whole injury status is. Maybe we'll get an update. Maybe we won't. But to me, Russell Gage is, again, you have to account for missed games, I feel like, with Russell Gage. Now, our friends over at Draft Shark, if they, they're somebody that I go to for injury news. I always pull up their page when it comes to injuries. They label him as a low-risk injury guy. I don't agree with this. I disagree with this by Draft Sharks. They say his chance for injury in 2024, 34.5% chance to miss at least 2 quarters. His chance of injury per game is 2.5. He's projected to miss 1.6 games this season. But you look at his injury history, he had a concussion in 2020, a groin strain in 2020. He had an injury in college, a knee strain. He had another patella sprain in his rookie season. He had a hip sprain, another concussion in 2019, an ankle sprain in 2021, a hamstring strain in 2022, another hamstring strain in 2022, another concussion, which was pretty bad, in 2023. And then obviously I mentioned the patella tendon tear, right? And that was during a joint practice, I believe, with the Giants. So who is Russell Gage? What can we expect? What can he bring to the table? Well, let's start off with his stats total. We'll just get into that. His best season was in 2020 with the Atlanta Falcons, had 72 catches for 786 yards and 4 touchdowns. His best touchdown year came in 2022 with the Buccaneers. Obviously, those were Tom Brady's Buccaneers back in the day. And I say back in the day like it wasn't just a few years ago. But Gage, really, he hasn't really stepped on the field in a year. More than a year. Like, it's been a while since Russell Gage has played, about a year and a half since he's played a game in the NFL. So he's already practicing for the Ravens. He's wearing number 6. Obviously, that is Patrick Queen's number. So a little changing of the guard there from Patrick Queen to Russell Gage. But he's someone that he's like a 4.4, 4.5 speed guy. So he's not going to wow you, but he is faster than he looks, I would say. He's a versatile player. To me, he can also play the special teams role if they want. We know John Harbaugh and company, they love the special teams aspect of things. He's easy in the open field, meaning that if he gets into space, he can make something happen. He has moves in the open field that can get him open. We have seen that in college. We have seen that during his time in the pros. And some of the stuff that was said about him, and this has been said really dating back to LSU, but all of his NFL, like everybody says that he is a team player, team first guy, a motivated guy. His work ethic and leadership is off the charts. There we go. So I think for me, Russell Gage is somebody that can come in, and we know this is a young wide receiver group outside of Nelson Aguilar. This brings another leader into that room. Not that Nelson Aguilar is not a good leader. He most certainly is. But you bring somebody else into there. Now, he is around 6 foot. He's 186 pounds, and that was, what he was, and hasn't really changed since then. Like, that was the scouting report coming out of college, and he's still around that 6 foot, 185 pound frame. That's what he likes to play at, and that's fine. But to me, this is a player that you can maybe use in a couple of different packages, but I'm not expecting a huge role. This is not a needle-moving move for me. Now, I see Raven 76 B more asking, did Rashad Bateman get hurt? Bateman did get injured. He got injured yesterday at practice. He came down with a touchdown. We talked about this actually on yesterday's show with Valerie Preactor, which was an amazing interview, by the way. So I'll do a little shameless plug if you want to go listen to that. I highly recommend it personally. I highly do. But Bateman came down after an end zone catch where he leaped over 2 defenders and was down on the ground for a while, apparently, and was holding his ribs, shoulder-ish area. John Harbaugh did not have an update yesterday, and he is not at practice today. So I again, it's hard to tell because we don't have an update. We don't really know what happened. I don't necessarily think that this has to do with Rashad Bateman and more for bringing in somebody else. Honestly, it might have more to do, and let me pull up the practice report quickly here, but it might have more to do with, for the Ravens, them just getting a leader in there, because at this point, I mean, Zay Flowers is your one, and you're fine with that. I'm fine with that. Zay is a phenomenal player. But then after that, it's Bateman, and, it's maybe Tez Walker, Aguilar. Gage is a 4 or a 5 to me. He's not somebody that's going to come in and challenge Bateman for the 2 role. I don't even expect him to come in and challenge Aguilar for the 3. I think that's best case scenario for Gage. He comes in, he makes the roster, and is like their 5th guy. But it does have maybe an impact on what this team does at the wide receiver position when it comes to a roster construction percentage. So we're going to see what happens here. And yeah, I don't think this is a big move, Oreo. I just think that, the Ravens, they love their depth signings late into training camp, or, getting into the training camp portion of things. This is not a needle mover. The Ravens aren't winning the Super Bowl because they signed Russell Gage. Can he contribute to that? Absolutely. But this is not a move to me that says, oh, well, look, the Ravens wide receiver group just went from the, X best to now they're moving up 15 spots. No, but it's a solid depth piece. Then, that's fine. I'm okay with it. I don't assume that I'm assuming this is a vet min deal. I don't believe we have the specifics at the time of this recording, but Gage is a player that can come in and just be veteran depth, and it is what it is. So he's an intriguing player. He actually does have some passing chops. He threw a touchdown during his Atlanta days. So maybe Todd Monken wants to open up that Greg Roman vault. No, I'm just kidding. We're not touching that Greg Roman vault anymore. Maybe his own version of a vault, because I do expect the Ravens to have more trickeration in them this season. Coming up in the second part of the show, though, we're going to be talking more about what Russell Gage actually brings to the table for the team. Plus, what does it mean for Baltimore's wide receiver group in general? More so the guys on the back end of the depth chart. So be sure to stay tuned. We still have a lot to get to here on this bonus instant reaction edition of Locked On Ravens. First, this show is brought to you by FanDuel. I love sports. I love them so much. I never want them to stop. But as the playoffs wind down, we get fewer games and the sports aren't sporting like I want them to. But FanDuel lets me keep the sports going whenever I want. All I have to do is open the app and dream up bets anytime I'm in the mood. And this summer, FanDuel's hooking up all customers with a booster bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone every day, all summer long. So in the MLB, Gunnar Henderson for the Orioles, still in the MVP conversation, although I would say it's probably Aaron Judge and Bobby Witt Jr. is the 1-2 there. But if you want those odds, head over to FanDuel. Plus, the Ravens and Chiefs opening up in less than a month on September 5th, and they opened up, the Ravens did, is 2.5-point underdogs over there. So if you want that line, FanDuel has it covered as well. Head over to FanDuel.com and start making the most out of your summer. FanDuel, official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball. We are back with our second segment, a bonus edition of Locked On Ravens. Kevin Ostreicher still here with you on this Tuesday afternoon. Really appreciate everybody again for being here today, making Locked On Ravens a part of your day. And be sure to make your second listen Locked On NFL. I do host that show over on Mondays. We talk a lot just about the general sports landscape. So from a Ravens perspective, if you want that insight on opponents, Locked On NFL is the place to be for sure. We have a lot of people in the comments here tuning in on this Tuesday afternoon. Really appreciate everybody for being here. And if you can't catch these live sometimes, first of all, if you can, be sure to turn notifications on YouTube. But if not, you can watch it back in replay, or we do put them out in audio form if you are a listener. And Cube, I did not get the renovation tour yesterday. I had to leave. For those who don't know, I do work with the Ryan Ripken Show, doing Orioles content, Ravens content, and they did a whole thing. I had to actually record Locked On Ravens for that. But yeah, doing great work over there as well. So appreciate you, David. Really appreciate the support. We're coming up, actually, just before we get more into Russell Gage, very quickly, we're coming up into my 5-year anniversary of Locked On Ravens, coming up on Monday, which is crazy to think about. Remember that season back in 2019, Lamar's MVP year, Marquise Brown's rookie year? I mean, man, it's been a long time since then, and hopefully the Ravens can get the job done this season. But let's talk about Gage a little bit more. To me, I think that in terms of what they actually get out of Gage this season, I'm not expecting much, because again, we've talked about this before on this show. it's like, okay, I know a lot of people have an opinion about Marquise Brown and kind of what his tenure was in Baltimore, but he was a solid player during his time in Baltimore. Zay Flowers is on the up and up. Mark Andrews, right, has been Lamar's right-hand man forever now. Those three guys have been the main targets in a Lamar Jackson Baltimore Ravens offense. It's just true. Those are the guys that'll get anywhere from 7 to 10 targets a game. He likes to get with those guys, get that connection, and that's fine. He's comfortable, and that's great. But for the guys lower on the depth chart, it's usually okay. Well, is this guy going to get 2 targets a game, 3, 4, 5? Like it is, if your name is not in that top, you're probably not getting a ton of targets on a week-to-week basis, which is why I do believe that the Ravens should be a more balanced group this year. Like, I just think that if the Ravens truly believe in Rashad Bateman, which I think they do, I don't think they're lying about that. But if the Ravens truly believe in him, they need to get him more targets. And if Lamar is going to have a connection with Mark Andrews again, which he absolutely should, if Lamar is going to target Zay Flowers a bunch this season, which he absolutely should, those guys' target shares should not go down. But you also have to feed Isaiah Likely this year. He absolutely deserves more targets. I think Rashad Bateman deserves more targets. Obviously, Odell Beckham Jr. is not there anymore, but it's not like he was getting a ton of targets anyway. It's not like he was in that, okay, he's getting 7 to 10 targets a game. He was in that 2 to 4 target per game range. So now you throw Bateman into that conversation, and if he's going to be a wide receiver too, you have to feed him the ball more. So to me, when you're signing a Russell Gage, he's not someone that's going to take away those targets from Bateman. Again, he's not competing for Bateman's number 2 spot. But, you know, if we're already talking about, okay, how is Likely going to factor in? How is Bateman going to factor in? So there are 2 ways this can go. Either the Ravens become a more balanced group, they throw the ball more this season, which I do expect them to do. Not to the point, again, where they become a top 10 in attempts offense, but top 17, top 20, top 22. Like, I think that'd be solid. That's the way that Bateman and all these other guys, Aguilar, Gage, Tez Walker, et cetera, Likely, obviously, can get more targets. Or the target share could go down for guys like Mark Andrews and Zay Flowers. This is not the route I would take. You want to get the ball in your best playmaker's hands as much as you can. But so I expect Gage to be on the 1 to 3 target per game range. And again, this is assuming he even makes the team, right? There is a world where he does not, because let's talk about, and we can kind of talk more about this in the final part of the show as well, but let's kind of dive into this, because the Ravens, with the way their roster is built, and look, if you've been in every day around the show, you know my opinion on the Ravens and how many wide receivers I believe they should keep. Anywhere from 5 to 7, but 5 is a little too little for me, and 7 is a little too many. I think 6 is that wide receiver sweet spot, and you know there are already 4 locks. I think there are 5, but there are 4 absolute locks. Zay Flowers, Rashad Bateman, Nelson Aguilar, Tez Walker. Those are your 4 absolute locks. Deontay Hardy, I believe, is also a lock because they value him as the returner, and I think they use a wide receiver spot on him. So I think that's 5. So with that being said, if the Ravens are keeping 6 wide receivers and you already have Flowers, Bateman, Aguilar, Walker, Hardy all locked in, that is 1 spot for Russell Gage, Tylan Wallace, Malik Cunningham, Dayton Wade, all these other guys. They are fighting for 1 spot. Now, if you decide to keep 7, if you're the Ravens, you can do that. There is a world where that is okay, for sure. But that means you're sacrificing maybe an offensive lineman roster spot, an inside linebacker roster spot, an edge roster spot, corner, safety. You're sacrificing somewhere else if you keep 7 wide receivers. So how I expect this to go is I personally expect Russell Gage to make the roster. Now, we're obviously not even at past week 1 of the preseason, so that can change. But I would expect them to keep him. Now, if Tylan Wallace balls out in the preseason, I think that spot goes to him. I don't think this is a situation where Russell Gage is locked into that spot. But I do also think that they signed him to be some type of a veteran type of presence. But it's going to come down to who has the better preseason, in my opinion. So at that point, I think that Gage is that, like, he could even probably be, like, I wouldn't be shocked if he is a game day inactive. Here's another route they could go, though. If they decide to cut him from the roster, maybe this is just a tryout basis type of thing. Get him on the roster, get him acclimated, And they feel like if they end up cutting him during final cutdown day, they could maybe go and sign him to the practice squad as a vet if they don't think that any of their team is going to go and pick him off of waivers. Because that might be what this is, where they keep a Tylan Wallace, they keep a Dayton Wade, whoever it is, right? Malik Cunningham. And then they say it's like a handshake agreement type deal where it's like, all right, we really want you back on the practice squad. And he goes to the practice squad. The only way that wouldn't be the case probably is if he gets an active roster spot offer from somebody else. So this is a way to just get him acclimated. And then if an injury does happen, if you need to call up a vet, Russell Gage could be that. So we'll see. I see a Zedarian saying this is a DeMarcus Robinson type of move. Gage is a camp body, but he ends up staying. My prediction, like if I had to give a roster prediction right now, Gage would be my 6th wide receiver. I think that, again, Tylan Wallace does have a shot to go out there and win that job. So does Malik Cunningham. So does Dayton Wade, etc. But I'll value the vet right now. And assuming he can, again, get up to speed, which I think he can, I would probably put Gage there. But it could definitely be somebody else. And David asking, is the second quarterback Snoop? No, second quarterback's Josh Johnson. Right now, Tyler Huntley's with the Browns, which is still one of the more confusing moves of the offseason to me because he's like the 4th quarterback there. But, who knows? That'd be a crazy story if Huntley gets cut and comes back to Baltimore. It's not happening, but it would be a story. And I see Johnny saying Hardy hasn't practiced yet. Hardy returned to practice today, so he's practicing right now. If Hardy was still injured, Johnny, I would say this is more of a Hardy move where it's like, okay, what's the deal with Deontay Hardy? But he is back practicing today. So I think that, again, they value him as that returner. But if it wasn't, then it's kind of like, ooh, is this a move because Deontay Hardy's not really doing too well with the injury? But now that he's back at practice, I would say that it's not a Hardy move. It's more just a depth move. Hunter saying, is Devin Leary 3rd string? Yeah, Leary's the 3rd string guy. Emory Jones, I would expect to be their practice squad quarterback. I think they will keep 3 this season. But Gage is a player that will be working in, and I think we'll have some level of a role this preseason because, look, this is not a guy that's guaranteed a roster spot. He'll have to fight for it, and we'll see how it ends up looking. Coming up, though, we'll continue talking about this Russell Gage signing and just what it means for the team and everything surrounding it. Stay tuned. We are still live here on Tuesday. We're coming right back at you soon here on Locked On Ravens. But I do want to tell you first about BetterHelp. First, this show is sponsored by BetterHelp. And for me and a lot of other people, there are a bunch of self-care non-negotiables. Maybe you never skip leg day or therapy day. When your schedule is packed with kids' activities, big work projects, and more, it's easy to let your priorities slip. Even when we know what makes us happy, it's hard sometimes to make time for it. But when you feel like you have no time for yourself, non-negotiables like therapy are more important than ever. And therapy has so many different benefits, whether it's learning positive coping skills, how to set boundaries. It can empower you to become the best version of yourself. And it isn't just for those who've experienced major trauma. It's for everyone. If thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. All you have to do is fill out a brief questionnaire to get matched with a licensed therapist. Switch therapists anytime for no additional charge. Never skip therapy day with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/lockedon today to get 10% off the first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/lockedon. We return Locked On Ravens Instant Reaction Edition. Man, these episodes are always fun. Instant Reaction Edition. The Ravens signed Russell Gage. Kevin Oestreicher is still here with you on this lovely Tuesday afternoon. Again, everybody tuning in live, really appreciate you for being here. Be sure to hit that notification bell if you do want to know when we go live. We go live after every single Ravens game. That includes the preseason. We'll have a post-game preseason stream for you this Friday. Man, it is crazy. Ravens football is almost back. We are so close. That offseason felt long, didn't it? But now we are almost there. We also go live after every piece of Ravens big news. So I thought this was big enough to hit that live button. Also, a new thing we're introducing this season is game day episodes. So every game day we will have, so particularly on Sundays, right? We're going to have a game day episode every Sunday when they play on Sunday at 6 a.m. previewing the game officially. We have a lot of things coming your way here on Locked On Ravens, so really appreciate it. See, I have Taurus saying Bateman replacement is here. I don't know about that one. I don't know about that one, Taurus, but I do think that, look, Bateman has already had 2 injuries, and what has it been? 2 weeks of training camp? Has it already been 2 weeks? Wow, it's already been 2 weeks of training camp. But he has to stay healthy. If he doesn't stay healthy, this kind of goes down in flames for them wide receiver wise. I mean, this is the watered down version of what 2022 was, in my opinion, when they made him wide receiver 1. Now, the difference is Zay Flowers is the 1. So if Bateman goes down, it's not like you have nothing in the wide receiver room. Nelson Aguilar is still solid. Tez Walker can be a big factor for them. But Bateman is the key that unlocks this wide receiver group this season, right? Bateman is that key. You turn that key, he stays healthy. I think if he stays healthy, he has a big season. If he cannot, we might be looking at the end of the Rashad Bateman tenure with the Ravens. And it might just be time for a fresh start for everybody because he signed to a 3-year extension, right? This is not the end for him, I think, in terms of, well, it could be. They could trade him in the offseason if it doesn't go right. But for me, if Bateman doesn't have a good year this season, and, either he can't stay healthy or it's just not the year everybody expects, I don't think they necessarily get rid of him because, look, him on that contract, 3 years, about $15 million, $16 million, that's a steal of a deal. For wide receivers in this market, you keep those contracts on your team. That contract has value in its own right. But I don't think they trust him again as the 2. I don't even know if they trust him as the 3. They probably trust him as the 3. They probably do. But I think they bring in somebody to go next to Zay, and they kind of say, okay, Rashad, we need to get somebody else in here. We tried it, didn't work. Tried it again, didn't work. Him is the 3, but then again, does Bateman accept that? That's the other thing. We are talking way far down the line hypotheticals. Let's talk about what really happened here, and that is Russell Gage and a little bit more about that. Hunter asking, who's the wide receiver 1 this season? It's Zay, 100%. There's no question about it. It is Zay Flowers. And I know that Zay is not your prototypical 1, right? He's not your A.J. Brown type build. He's not your DK Metcalf, like those big body guys. But to me, that's not what defines a wide receiver 1, in my opinion. It's skill. I don't care if you're 5'9", 5'11", 6 foot, 6'1", 6'4", whatever it may be. If you have the skills and you're productive, you're a wide receiver 1 to me. So that is what it is. I think, too, the receiver group, we know that Mark Andrews is the top target, right? The top pass catcher on this team. I know there's been a lot of conversations. I personally do not understand it in terms of trading Mark Andrews. I understand Isaiah Likely is a beast. Right? I understand that he deserves a role, and he should have one. Here is how the Ravens cannot unlock their offense this season, is if they do not involve Isaiah Likely immensely. They have to give Likely targets. They need to. But in this offense, the tight ends, unless Zay Flowers, right? Zay Flowers is the guy. But outside of Zay, the tight ends run supreme. And that's fine. Because Andrews is a beast of a pass catcher. So is Isaiah Likely. You have to be able to use those guys in tandem. They don't have a ton of experience. They have some, but they don't have a ton of experience in 2 tight end sets together, let alone 2 tight end sets with both of them producing. So you have to find a way to do that. And that's the key. I mean, we talk about Bateman. Like, yes, he unlocks the wide receiver room. I think Likely unlocks the whole offense. Right? You have multiple sets of keys, there are big locks, there are small locks, big keys, small keys. I think Bateman is a pretty medium to big size key, but Likely is a massive key that unlocks everything else that this team does because you can use them in the slot. You can use them out wide. Obviously, you can use them in line. And to me, I think they're really interesting. I talked about my 5-year anniversary coming up on Monday and started that off during the 2019 season. Part of the 2019 season, what made them so successful were their 3 tight end sets. And if you've been listening to me for an everydayer, I've said this and I'll say it again. We're so far past 2019, right? That offense has no bearing on what this offense can be. But I would say that they should probably at least think about it. Maybe not do it, but at least think about it using some 3 tight end sets this season. Because I think with Andrews, Likely, and Kohler, especially with the play action game, the RPO game, if you want to lean into that more, I mean, there are so many options that they can do. 3 tight end sets throw defenses off, especially when you are the Ravens and you have Lamar Jackson and Derrick Henry in that backfield. To where if Derrick Henry is beating on you, if he's doing the dirty work to you, and the defense starts to creep up and you have your personnel in, right? That defense is creeping up. They're saying we have to stop Derrick Henry. You can run a play action off of that. Andrews, Likely, Kohler. You can run those guys in the middle of the field. We know Mark Andrews is a middle of the field monster. But that heavy personnel is not going to be able to keep up with guys like Mark Andrews and Isaiah Likely for the entirety of a game, for an entire 60 minutes. And so then you talk about, well, what about Lamar, right? If you're worried about Lamar, whether he's taking it to the edge or Lamar's beating you with his arm, right? He's doing all the Lamar Jackson things. Well, then you have to bring in some of your other personnel, right? Your defensive back packages, your lighter personnel to try to combat that aspect. And then you bring in a 3 tight end set if you're the Ravens. And then you just say, all right, if you're bringing in these light guys, we're just going to run the ball down your throat. That to me is where it is. So for me, I think there'll be specific packages for a lot of guys this season. Tez Walker, for one, who I think is going to be really exciting. I think Deontay Hardy will have his own set of packages too. Maybe a couple Russell Gage plays here and there, assuming he makes the roster, right? We still don't know that yet. But I think that with this being year 2 of Todd Monken's offense, and guys have talked about it. Mark Andrews has talked about it, and Monken himself has talked about it. And I see Justin here saying, yeah, he's got to get in his bag. Todd Monken, I agree, Justin. He absolutely does. Because last year was the feel it out process, right? And I think we saw that during the season when they struggled with consistency. I mean, remember last year, I think a lot of people forget about this, but remember last year when there were 2 ways a Ravens game could go on offense for like half the season. It was they'd start off super fast and then not score for 3 quarters, or they'd start off super slow and then have the comeback of your life. Like it felt like those were the two ways it could have gone last season for the Ravens. But this year, I feel like, again, with a better understanding of the personnel, with the players' better understanding of the offense in general, with them being able to have that full body of work, that full season of work together, that's going to be a key thing too. And then incorporating guys like Likely and Bateman more, this could be a big year for them. But again, it all goes with Lamar Jackson. He is the guy that makes these gears turn. And Hunter asking, do you think Henry's going to be good this year? I do. I know that everybody talks about, well, he's 30 years old or the wheel's going to fall off, high usage rate in Tennessee. I think the Ravens are going to manage him to a decent extent, especially when Keaton Mitchell comes back. And that's a whole other aspect of the offense we didn't even talk about, right, with Keaton when he comes back. But Henry's a guy that just plays off of Lamar really well. His speed is an underrated aspect to him because people look at Derrick Henry and they just see this mammoth of a human being, this monster of a human. But his speed is there. He has deceptive speed for his size. He can be a pass catcher out of the backfield. He is not a one-dimensional north-south physical runner. He has a lot of other aspects to his game. So I think that for Henry, being able to have guys like Keaton Mitchell and Justice Hill spell him, or Owen Wright, who's been getting rave reviews at camp, Rasheen Ali, you're still going to – he's a bell cow. And the Ravens haven't had a bell cow guy in their offense for a while now. It's been, a Gus Edwards, J.K. Dobbins committee. They've had committees with Lamar Jackson. But Derrick Henry is going to be your bell cow type player. I think that benefits the Ravens, honestly, as opposed to the committee. And Henry, we've seen from him, can maintain a pretty heavy workload for the majority of a season. He's had totals of high upwards 300 carries, high 200s carries. Like, he has been a monster. And in this Ravens offense, I do think it plays to his strengths, especially because of the foot speed. And then I see, Don saying Tylan Wallace monster on the kickoffs, whether it be as a gunner. He also, obviously, we saw the punt return against the Rams, one of the moments of the year. Could be a really big impact for Baltimore as well. But so the Ravens, they signed Russell Gage. Again, specifics not known yet, but just a solid vet depth piece, not necessarily the big needle mover, right? We're going to see what happens. But to me, I do feel like this is just it's a solid depth signing. I'll give it a B, right? Not the biggest signing in the world. I'm not expecting too much, but if he makes the roster, can maybe come in and make a couple impact plays throughout this season. That's all I have for you here today, though, on this live edition of Locked On Ravens. Really appreciate everybody for being here, tuning in. If you haven't already, be sure to go watch or listen to today's episode, the one from Tuesday. Valerie Preactor of WBAL sat down with us to talk about all things Ravens, Rashad Bateman, and more. We also are going to have some Locked On Ravens fantasy leagues this season. So if you're a fantasy football player, I'm going to start getting that all together probably in the next couple of weeks. And those announcements will be posted up on Twitter and probably on Instagram too. Be sure to follow me on Twitter and Instagram at KLStriker34. And we'll be back here tomorrow talking about more Russell Gage, more Ravens. Again, we're 5 days a week here on Locked On Ravens. So be sure to subscribe, follow along, video form and audio form. I'll see you right back here tomorrow on Locked On Ravens.